let us now watch a clip on life as it is lived in the villages. Now chances are that many of you must have visited villages. There people live in small thatched huts. And there are mud roads instead of concrete roads as we see in the cities. Now in the village, life is characterized by a certain sense of simplicity. You will not find a lot of modernization and urbanization in the rural spaces. Their ways of living, their ways of cooking food, their ways of transportation are also very, very different from what we see and witness in our urban modern lives. When we live in urban spaces, we take it for granted that societies have been like this since the ages. We think that these societies have always had these high-rise buildings, lots of vehicles, many industries, factories and offices. But you will be surprised to know that societies have not begun from this point. Because at one point of time, people used to live isolated lives. Settlements were not there, let alone cities and towns. But in prehistoric time, people slowly started forming settlements. And when they started settling to stay in one place for a longer period of time, population also started growing. This growth of settlement together with the growth in population now slowly led to the rise of villages. And over the ages, over a series of changes and developments, the villages also started thriving and those gave birth to new towns. So what we need to understand in this lesson is that this has been a series of changes. It is a trajectory where we will begin by discussing about the villages as they were in prehistoric and ancient Indian subcontinent between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE and how these villages thrived over time in order to give rise to many new towns and how these towns with time also came and emerged as cities. So without wasting any time, let us now begin our discussion on vital villages and thriving towns. Now in the ancient Indian subcontinent, rural life has been the very basis of existence. What does this mean? This means that when people started settling in settlements, villages were formed at the outset. There were no cities or towns. And in these villages, many people used to live. Many people from different rungs of the society like landowners, farmers, priests, peasants and different other people who pursued different professions. Now, village was the distinct unit of rural life. Let us now find out how these villages came into being and how people lived in these villages. Now when people start settling somewhere, a very important thing that needs to be taken care of is law and order. Because in today's world we have our courts, we have our police forces who take care of law and order in the society. But when people started settling down and stopped pursuing the lives of hunter-gatherers, they were forming settlements. And in the settlements, population also started growing. Now with the growing population, more and more people were living in the same region, which is why they required leadership in their everyday lives. Now you must be questioning, who was the leader of these villages? Well, these villages were led by leaders who were known as the village headman. Now the question that arises in this regard is that who were these village headmen? How did they become the headmen? Because not all people who lived in the villages became the headmen. So how did they become so? Now here we come to the issue and the concept of property. Because these village headmen were people who owned large tracts of land and were very influential in those villages. So it goes without saying that these village headmen were very rich landowners, which is why on account of their property, on account of their wealth and resources, these people became the village headmen. So because they owned large tracts of land, these people now started leading the people who lived in those villages. Now these village headmen also wanted to ensure that power and position remained restricted within their families itself. Now how did they do so? To this end, the position of the village headman was made hereditary. What does this mean? This means that after the death of a village headman, it would invariably be his son who would become the next village headman, and in this way this position of the village headman remained restricted within the family of the headman itself. Now let us learn a little more about these villages and how these village headmen took care of different things in these villages. Now we have learnt about the fact that the position of the village headman was hereditary in nature. And along with that, keep another point in mind, that this position was also patriarchal in nature. By this we mean that after the death of a village headman, it would be his son who would now become the next village headman and not his daughter, even if that daughter was elder than the son. So the position was both hereditary and patriarchal in nature. But what were these village headmen called? There must be some specific term to refer to these village headmen. Now, one very important point that we need to take into account in this regard is that India has always been characterized by multi-ethnicity, which means that people of different ethnicities, people of different groups live together in this nation. And when people of different groups live together, it would also mean that these different people will also have their own languages, which is why many languages are used in the nation. Now this thing was seen in ancient times as well. Multilinguistic as the Indian subcontinent was, there were different terms for referring to the village headman. Now, in the northern part of the subcontinent, the village headman was called the Grama Bhojaka. We have learned that these village headmen were very wealthy landowners. Now, this Grama Bhojaka in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent had huge amounts of lands. So they were very wealthy and influential, which is why they were the village headmen. Now, these Grama Bhojaka owned lands on which landless people used to live. We will come to that in a while. But for now, remember that the Grama Bhojaka were very wealthy and very influential within the space of the villages. Now, what tasks were performed by these village headmen? As the leader and head of the villages, these village headmen used to collect taxes from the villagers. So, the kings often used these village headmen, who were very powerful and influential, for the purpose of collection of taxes from the villagers. And along with that, these village headmen also used to resolve disputes and took care of justice in the villages. So what we can understand from this is that these village headmen used to function as both the judge and policeman in the villages. Divisions are also prevalent among the propertied and the rich people. What do I mean by this? Now, when we talk about rich people, some are very rich, like the industrialists and the business tycoons, while on the other hand, some are just rich. So the point that we need to establish here is that there is a difference among the rich people as well with regard to the amount of resources and wealth they own. Now this is not something new, because in ancient Indian subcontinent as well, this division among the rich people was also present. While we talked about the Grama Bhojaka who were very wealthy and they owned huge tracts of lands, there were smaller landowners as well. And what were these smaller landowners known as? They were called the Grihapatis. Now these Grihapatis were independent farmers. So they owned small tracts of lands in which they practiced farming. Now from this you must be wondering that in the ancient Indian subcontinent all people were rich. All people owned small or huge tracts of land. But you will be wrong to assume so. This is because difference between the rich, wealthy, influential and the poor and poverty stricken will always be there. There will always be the difference and the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Some people will have a lot of resources at their disposal while other people will not have so. And the same division was prevalent in the ancient Indian subcontinent as well. There were people who did not own any tract of land. While we were talking about the Grama Bhojaka, we mentioned this point that there were people who were landless and they were compelled to work in the lands that were owned by the Grama Bhojaka. Now what were these landless people known as in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent in ancient times? They were known as the Dasa Karmakara. The word Dasa means a slave or a servant. And these people as landless folks, they had to work and till the lands that were owned by the rich and the wealthy landowners. And the Dasa Karmakara had to strive and struggle a lot in order to earn a living. When people start settling somewhere to form any kind of settlement, village or town, agriculture cannot be the only profession that all the people pursue. Because along with the growing of food crops, many other things are required. Let me give you an example. If we just have the food crops, we will not be able to cook them. In order to cook those food crops, we will need utensils. We will also need these utensils to have the food. So just to have food, we need so many things. And in the ancient Indian subcontinent as well, different kinds of things were in demand. So along with the pursuit of agriculture, people pursued different professions in the likes of pottery, weaving, carpentry and blacksmithing. So these were different kinds of works that people in the villages used to do. Now all this while we have been focusing on life in the villages as they were found in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent. It is time to travel to the southern part and see what we can find in the Tamil region. Now here the wealthy landowners were known as the Vellalar. So we learned that in the northern part of the subcontinent the landowners were known as the Grama Bhojaka, and here in the Tamil region they were known as the Vellalar. And there were many ordinary people, ordinary ploughmen who used to work on the fields that were owned by the Vellalar. And these ordinary ploughmen were called the Uzhavar. Now there were also slaves and servants in the ancient Indian subcontinent, and they were compelled to do menial works. Now in the Tamil region, the landless laborers and slaves were called Kadaisiyar and Adimai. They used to work in the lands that were owned by the wealthy people. They were also often exploited simply because they were landless and they did not have resources at their disposal. Another pertinent question arises in this regard. How do we know so much about the people who lived in the Tamil region so many hundreds of years ago in the ancient Indian subcontinent? For this reason, Sangam literature comes to our rescue. This body of Sangam literature was written in Tamil. And these Tamil terms that we have been discussing, be that the Vellalar or the Uzhavar, are something that we get to know from Sangam literature. Here you can see an inscription of Sangam literature. This is written in Tamil. Now the question that we need to address is that what is Sangam literature? Sangam literature constitutes some of the earliest works in Tamil that were written around 2300 years ago. Can you understand how old these works were? Now these works play a very crucial role in giving us a lot of information about the people, their lifestyle, who used to live back then. Now you must also be questioning, what does this word Sangam mean? As in, why is this body of literature written in Tamil in the ancient Indian subcontinent known as Sangam literature? Let us now find out the meaning of this word Sangam. But before finding out the meaning of the word Sangam, let me ask you a question. Sangam literature is written in Persian, Tamil, Sanskrit or Urdu. Will you be able to fill in the blank with the correct option? Well, the correct answer is Tamil. Sangam literature was written in Tamil. So we will now find out what this word Sangam means. In Tamil, the word Sangam means assembly. Now, how is a body of literary works referred to as assembly? This is because these body of works that comprise the Sangam literature were composed and compiled in assemblies of poets and scholars, and these happened in Madurai, which is located in the present day Indian state of Tamil Nadu. So this is the reason why Sangam literature is called so. With this, we have come to an end of our discussion on the introduction to vital villages and thriving towns. Here our focus was on the villages as they were seen in the ancient Indian subcontinent in both the northern and the southern parts. Now here a very important point that we raised is that these villages have gone through series of changes and development and evolution to give birth to newer kind of settlements. And these newer kind of settlements were known as towns. In our subsequent lesson, we will carry on with this discussion and understand this trajectory as to how villages led to the birth of towns, how towns grew in importance and size and then gave birth to cities. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.